All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We know in all of the issues and challenges that we face, really looking out for our workers and looking out for worker rights and for worker justice has got to be paramount and fundamental to everything we're doing. And as a part of our reimagining county government, as a part of our framework for the future and pointing our county in a new direction, I am bringing forward a proposal to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow, Tuesday, May 4th, to create an Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. This would be a new entity here at the county. It would have a new focus, and it would be our county government making a definitive step forward that we are structurally going to look out for issues of labor standards and enforcement, in particular, looking out and investing resources and helping protect San Diego County workers. The laws regulating workplaces, they're a mix of federal, state, and local, and an Office of Labor Standard and Enforcement can help throughout San Diego County. There are bad employers who cheat their workers and the system, and this new office will help protect worker rights, can help hold bad actors accountable, and can become a valuable information resource for both workers and employees, especially those good faith employers who are trying to do the right thing. Not all workers have a labor union to back them up when their company mistreats them. And with this policy, I believe we are creating a safe, accessible place for workers to go when they need help. Services we envision being provided by this office include providing central information source for workers and businesses, engaging business and community partners in education and outreach, acting as an expert on regional issues related to workplace laws and requirements and related to workers, an annual report back to the County Board of Supervisors, along with policy recommendations about how we might better serve the workers of San Diego County. Would also explore the creation of a workplace justice fund that could provide resources to workers seeking justice on workplace issues and needing assistance. I think this fund is very important in that the willingness to come forward and share potential violations is often limited by a worker's reality that if they do that, they could lose their job. And so they endure exploitation because they are fearful of losing that paycheck, which, although it may be substandard or illegal, still is what their family depends on. And I think the creation of this type of fund could help significantly. This office could also facilitate complaints related to county contracts, can help determine what enforcement mechanisms could be put in place at the county to protect workers. I think there's probably a number of enforcement mechanisms, but it is going to take a little time to really evaluate what are the options, what is out there, and what should we do. I want to thank in particular members of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition, who several years ago raised this issue that we needed an Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. I also want to thank the members of organized labor in San Diego County who care not just about their unionized workforce, but about all workers. And there's a long history in the labor movement of fighting for things that help all workers across all industries, and I appreciate their help as well. In February, during my State of the County address, I announced we would be bringing forward this policy for our board's consideration, and I'm hopeful that they will support it. And today we're joined by several community partners and stakeholders we've been working with to determine what should go into creating this office. And I appreciate those who are joining us here today. Alora Calderon, Director of the Employee Rights Center, Legal Director, the Political Director at the Building Trades San Diego and Imperial County Building Trades Council. Also, two important worker voices from San Diego who can share their perspective, Martha Orozco and Rene. And before we get to them, I just want to touch briefly again on the need for this. During the COVID-19 pandemic, workers showed up to work. They put themselves at risk, but they kept our essential and vital services going. But we really saw throughout COVID the challenges and the exploitation our workers can face. We know, according to the Economic Policy Institute, an estimated $2 billion was stolen each year from California workers just for minimum wage violations alone. And that is $2 billion that the workers were entitled to. That was the fruit of their labor that they should have been provided. That's also $2 billion that could have gone into the California economy. A study by San Diego Center for Policy Initiatives that interviewed 2,600 hourly workers found that 64% of those workers either did not receive any sick days, received fewer than they were entitled, or faced retaliation when taking a sick day. And we wonder why, as a country, we have a hard time responding to global pandemics. It's because even when you pass sick time rules, employees are not allowed or not facilitated or discouraged from utilizing what is their legal right. This is simply unacceptable, and everyone who is joining us here today is working and is a part of an effort to do something about it. And we know that we have a lot of work to do. And this is merely, I think, a first step along with several parallel efforts we're taking to try and make a substantive difference. And so I want to kick it off to hear some of the challenges with the current system. I appreciate it, Lord. We've stood together time and again on many, many, many important issues related to workers. This is a continuation of this work, and I appreciate the work that they do every day. Lord has a deep understanding of the challenges of workers navigating the system, of overwhelmed labor commissioners, the length of time that these cases can take, and so wanted to turn it over to Alor first to share some insights and perspectives.
Thank you, Chairman Fletcher. And first of all, I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank Marta Orozco. She's a worker. She's a volunteer. She's the reason why we're here. And I want to thank everybody else in this panel, which are amazing advocates who have been fighting hard for employees and for a truly better San Diego. And I want to start by saying that we all know that money in our pockets means freedom. We all know that resource means we can take care of our families. We can make sure they have food, make sure they can go to school and have what they need, but also they can enjoy life. They can do things that matter in everyday things, but also in the things that, when you go to graduation, you want them to have, a nice robe. We need resources, money in our pocket to be able to do things. And unfortunately, if you're as a great Senator policy advocate, used to say, if you're in the cash register and somebody takes $5, you will not see the end of that day, because your supervisor and everybody around you, they're going to say, where's those $5? You might be fired, you're stealing from the company. They will not let you go. But when somebody gets into your pocket, when they owe you thousands of dollars in overtime, or they haven't paid you, nobody comes calling. And this is why we are here, because freedom to be able to do the things that we need to do as workers, as residents of San Diego, is basic to a better San Diego. And so as the Employee Rights Center, myself as the director, I'll introduce myself, Amador Calderon, with the Employee Rights Center. We know since 1999 that there are way too many issues that our employees, both represented and unrepresented, are facing, and that there are not enough resources in the county. As the Center on Policy Initiatives and the Invest in San Diego families have been advocating for, there are not enough resources from the state or from the cities to deal with the 40,000+ potential claims that could need to be brought forward in order to conservatively say that we're dealing with the issues that this county is facing as far as wage and hour, just wage and hour. And so this is not the San Diego we want. We don't want, again, to have another year where we say the labor commissioner, which is a great state institution, is totally impacted, does not have the resources to deal with the amount of claims that come forward. We know that workers have many issues that don't have a place to go. This is why we think it is so important to have an office like this one, like Chairman Fletcher said, that is going to look into the patterns, is going to look into what's possible, so we truly have an integrated system in the county that deals with all issues for workers in a way that we have not had ever. I myself have been working with workers for a little bit over 16 years, and the issue is always the same. Not only do workers do not know what the rights are, and also workers do not know, even when they get a violation, they do not know where to go. But more importantly, they don't think there are places that really have their back. And what they're really asking is, if you give us what we deserve, just what we deserve, we're going to make this county better. We're going to make businesses better. And not only that, we're going to make the whole county thrive. But give us what we deserve. And this office is a great step in that direction. So to speak a little bit on those issues, and somebody who has been dealing with this for many years, we have a great advocate with us. It's Marta Orozco. Marta Orozco will switch places with me and tell you a little bit about her story. Marta.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Marta Orozco, soy voluntaria en Employer Center.
Good morning, my name is Marta Orozco and I am a volunteer with the Employee Rights Center.
Por mucho tiempo trabajé en restaurante y solamente aquí en Employer Center encontré apoyo a las injusticias que estuve viviendo.
For many years, I worked in the restaurant industry and it was only at the ERC that I found the support that I needed.
Sabes que tienes trabajo, sabes que tienes que cumplir con tu labor, pero no sabes que tienes vida, no sabes que tienes libertad de actuar.
So I knew that I had a job and I knew that I had a schedule, but I didn't feel entitled to have freedom or just a regular life.
Tienes que cubrir tu tiempo de trabajo, el de la persona que falte o el de la persona que no rinda bien, pero no tienes decisión de descansar, no puedes tener una vida normal. El problema más grande es el sueldo.
So we knew that we had to make up time for people that weren't showing up for work, but we didn't exactly know when we had time or when we were entitled to rest or what other rights we were entitled to.
No hay pago extra, no te cumplen lo que te piden. Tú sí te tienes que quedar a trabajar, pero no te pagan lo mismo que a la persona que estás cubriendo.
So we didn't really know what rights we had in terms of overtime. We just knew that we had to do extra work.
Y si no estás amenazado por perder tu trabajo, perder hasta seguir viviendo aquí, las amenazas son varias por no pagarte lo que tú estás trabajando, lo que tú estás desarrollando.
There were many threats always, and often we felt that we were not getting paid our due pay for the hours that we were working.
Dejas de tener calidad de vida por cumplir con tu trabajo, porque necesitas el dinero, porque necesitas seguir viviendo aquí.
So the quality of life definitely suffers because we need to make the money, we need to be able to stay here, but we compromise the quality of our life.
Por eso ahora es muy importante este apoyo para que tengamos una oficina que nos apoye, que tengamos a dónde ir a decir lo que nos están obligando a hacer para que nos proteja.
This Office of Labor Enforcement and Labor Standards is very important so that we have a centralized place to go to file our complaints.
Para todos los trabajadores del condado es muy importante sentirse apoyados y sentirse valorados.
And this is very important.
Duro.
This is very important for all the workers of the county. We need to feel valued. We work very hard.
Y agradezco mucho su tiempo y ojalá que esto sea una realidad, que tengamos apoyo de verdad los trabajadores que de verdad estuvimos muy olvidados.
We appreciate your time. We very much need this office. We feel like a forgotten labor force, and it's about time we get our due and fair treatment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Marta. Gracias for your words and your comments. And thank you, Laura, for all of your work. Next, we want to go to Rene Amador, the legal director at Maintenance Corporation Trust Fund. And, you know, Rene, I'm hoping you can talk about your work to eliminate illegal and unfair business practices in the janitorial industry and all of the work you're doing both across the state, but share about some of your work in San Diego. and what you have experienced and seen, particularly as it relates to janitorial.
Sure, of course. Like Chair Fletcher said, my name is Rene Amador. I'm the legal director of the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund. So MCTF is a statewide janitorial watchdog group that advocates for non-union janitors. We have investigators all over the state and including in San Diego that educate and empower non-union janitors to exercise their rights in the workplace. As legal director, I work with various law enforcement agencies to advocate for a safer and more responsible janitorial industry, including with the Labor Commissioner's Office in San Diego, as well as the DA's office and the City Attorney's Office in San Diego. So the proposed OLSE office will greatly help San Diego's janitors and other workers. I have worked with the San Francisco Office of Labor Standards Enforcement and the City of LA's Office of Wage Standards and can speak personally to their success. These local offices are not redundant to the California Labor Commissioner's Office. If you're not familiar, the California Labor Commissioner's Office is the statewide employment law enforcement agency in the state. They provide essential expertise. The localized labor standards enforcement agencies provide essential expertise on local laws for the area for workers and employers. For example, in San Diego, the City of San Diego sick leave pay law is sick leave for 5 days per year. That's not the same as it is throughout the state. So it's nice to have an localized office that knows the particular localized laws. Depending on the question, the local offices educate the worker or business on the basic laws and, if necessary, refer them to the proper agency. Over time, these localized labor standards agencies have developed specialized insight into the local economy and then advise local leaders of their observations and make recommendations. Localized enforcement initiatives are also a very exciting opportunity. I have many years of firsthand experience seeing local agencies be incredibly successful at bringing employers into compliance and speedily recovering workers' unpaid wages. The State Labor Commissioner's Office primary department is their wage adjudication unit, extremely high volume individual claims. The San Diego OLSE should not replicate that model. The county OLSE office has the opportunity, like other local agencies, to operate more flexibly and strategically. They can conduct worksite visits to inform employers about the law and ensure that they are in compliance, and can conduct wall-to-wall audits that make sure all workers employed by an unscrupulous employer recoup their unpaid wages. These more focused enforcement opportunities directly target the underground economy and ensure high road law-abiding businesses are not undermined or underbid by fraudulent and thieving businesses. Most importantly, the work of OLSE shows the public that the county or city is invested in the prosperity and well-being of its businesses and workers. So for that reason, we highly support the creation of this office. I have a worker on the line named Lorena Corral, who worked for a janitorial company that cleaned the county of San Diego businesses. Her and many of her coworkers were not paid their full wages, and the company did not comply with the law. We were able to help them, but what happened was every time we would refer them to the Labor Commissioner's Office, they would get the money that they were recouped only after going to the Labor Commissioner's Office. But what we saw is over the years, the practice kept happening. The company kept stealing workers' wages over time. They didn't change their practices. So the nice thing about having a local OLSE office is that that type of OLSE office can go to that business, investigate the business and all of their practices, and force or encourage them to change their practices to come into compliance with the law. And that's why we see the local OLSE office be so effective in other areas, and the San Diego OLSE office could do the same here. So I have Lorena on the line, and she's going to tell you her personal experience. Lorena, ¿estás lista?
Sí, estoy lista.
Ok, puede empezar.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Lorena Corral. Soy casada y vivo con mi esposo y mis 3 niños y mi mamá.
Hola, my name is
Un momentito,
Lorena.
ella va a traducir, ok?
My name is Lorena Corral, and I am a married woman living with my 3 children.
Yo trabajé para la compañía de limpieza NMS Management Inc. hasta el 2019.
I worked with a cleaning company until 2009.
Los lugares donde trabajé fueron San Diego Housing Commission y San Diego Country Administración.
And I worked with a contractual company that did cleaning. I worked with the San Diego Commission of Housing and also with the San Diego County.
Durante este tiempo que trabajé para esta compañía, recibí cheques sin fondos en varias ocasiones.
And during the time I was working with this company, I received checks that I was unable to cash because there was no money behind them.
Esto me causó retrasos para pagar mis gastos esenciales.
So I was unable to pay my essential bills because I had no money.
Por esta razón tuve que renunciar a mi trabajo con esta compañía.
And so I had to quit my job with this company.
El último cheque que recibí cuando renuncié tampoco tuvo fondos.
The last check that I received when I quit my job had no money to back it up.
Yo archivé un reclamo en el comisionado de labor por las multas de espera y cheques sin fondos.
And I had to file a complaint for that check without funds.
Sé que otros compañeros también archivaron casos en el comisionado por las mismas razones de cheques sin fondos, entre otras violaciones.
And so I know this company was denying us the right for these funds.
Yo estoy de acuerdo en que haya una oficina en el condado para que vigile las compañías que compran con la ley y respeten nuestros derechos.
And so I am completely in agreement with a new office of labor standards so that they can make these type of companies accountable for their failures with working people.
Y así no renunciar a nuestro trabajo como yo lo tuve que hacer yo. Muchas gracias.
And in that fashion, we do not have to quit our jobs like I was forced to do in 2009. Thank you very much.
So Ms. Corral is one of countless workers we've helped file claims against NMS. Those types of claims are still going on. We're still helping workers file claims against this company. The practices haven't changed. So that's why we would love this type of office that would be able to actually make a difference to change these practices and stop seeing the same patterns occur over and over and over. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene, and thank you, Lorena, for all of your work and your support of what we're doing, which is really designed to try and help our workers. This is about our workers at the end of the day who are just asking for a fair shake. They're just asking for people to follow the law and to treat them with the dignity of which they are required to do. And so thank you for your advocacy and help. Our final speaker today is Carol Kim, a dear friend, and in March, I brought forward a policy change to disclose subcontractor information license number for entities seeking building permits or right-of-way permits. But we know that enforcement and active monitoring will be essential to ensure that regulatory changes and things that we put in place meet the intended results. And the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement, I believe, can play a critical role in determining proper enforcement and facilitating potential actions against non-compliant actors. Carol, we want to turn it to you to talk about, from the building trades perspective, why this office is important in the broader labor movement.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the other panelists who are here talking about this today. It's a really important effort that we're putting forward, and I'm very proud of the fact that organized labor and the San Diego Building Trades Council specifically has been actively a part of it. and we're glad to be able to continue to support. This is a really important tool that's going to be able to help lots of folks, especially in the construction industry. What folks often don't realize is that construction workers are gig workers. So essentially we go from job to job to job. That makes it very hard at times for us to be able to track employment concerns or get those kinds of things addressed when especially when illegal activity is happening, when employers or contractors are not coming through on paying checks or salaries or wages appropriately, when safety precautions are not being enforced. I'll tell you, construction is one of the most dangerous industries for workers. It just, nationally speaking, the Department of Labor shows that their data shows that 1 out of 5 deaths that happen on a workplace happens on a construction site. And so when we're talking about that kind of level of risk to workers in terms of health and wellness, and then beyond that, the idea that people are risking their lives every day on these jobs and possibly not even being compensated fairly for them is really egregious in so many ways. So the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement is really going to be helpful in that regard. It'll help us attack and really address and come to terms with misclassification, which is something that is very, very rampant in the construction industry. Essentially, that's when workers who are supposed to be getting a certain standard of pay because of their trade or craft are getting paid lower or less, or not getting paid those wages at all. It's also a situation where workers are not getting paid workers' comp, or they're not getting overtime, or they're not getting even sometimes minimum wage. All of these things are things that are, again, really rampant in the construction industry, largely because those workers are, as I've mentioned, gig workers. When a construction worker goes onto a work site, as they're doing their job, they're literally putting themselves out of work, because once that job is finished, then they have to go find their next thing. So an Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement is going to be really critical to that. And specifically your subcontractor language in that policy you put forward earlier this year is really going to be critical as well, because especially in construction, but this happens in multiple industries, you'll have a situation where there's a general contractor that actually is the person or is the company that's got the job or the contract overall, but they sub out a lot of their work to subcontractors. And so subcontractors are often the ones who are on site, who are actually hiring workers and actually dealing with workers, but will often also be the ones who are doing illegal things when it comes to those workers in terms of make their compensation and pay and safety and all that stuff. So when we're talking about having transparency for who those subcontractors are, especially when they're working on public projects, but even when they're working on private projects, we really want to make sure that folks are able to even know who to go to, or who to ask for help, or who to target when we're saying, look, this subcontractor didn't pay me, or this subcontractor is not complying with workplace safety laws or OSHA requirements, et cetera. All of those things are things that the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement will be able to help us with. And as for organized labor, while offices like this are often going to be offices that work largely for non-union workers, we're super, super behind these kinds of efforts, because we know that when all workers are doing well and being treated with dignity and respect, that's good for everyone, whether they're a union member or not. So we're very excited, again, that you're moving this forward and to be part of this effort, and we're going to be looking forward to partnering with you closely on it.
Thank you, Carol. Before we go to media questions, I just want to thank Amador and Rene and Carol, the tireless work you do every day working on these issues, and your input you've given us in helping craft this and shape this, and the ongoing work. This is the first step. We're going to have more work to do to make sure it fulfills the promise and the intent that we are making today. And in particular, I want to thank Rene and Martha, our 2 workers who are here. You are what makes our economy work, and your labor is what takes care of your families and all of us. And we appreciate tremendously the work that you do every single day. It may feel unseen, and you may feel unseen, but you are not. We see you, and we know that you need help, and you need advocates, and you need people who care about what you do. And your labor and your efforts and the basic dignity for fairness and equality. And so we are here, and you have wonderful advocates on your side. And thank you for joining us today to lend a very personal perspective behind this important issue. With that, let me open it up. I know we have a few media members of the media who are on. Let me see if there's any questions from any of them. You could either pose them in the chat or just unmute yourself and feel free to ask.
Hey, Nathan, it's Jesse with Voice of San Diego.
Hey, Jesse.
So you guys have identified subcontractors as being a particular part of the problem. I have a two-part question, so I'll just throw the first one at you first. Just for clarification, has there not been monitoring by local law enforcement in the past of subcontractors, or what has that oversight looked like generally?
Let me ask some of the panelists if you can speak to that. I think Alor and Rene probably will have great insight. But Jesse, one point before I go to them is that requires the worker has a resource in place to go to report that. And again, you know, that's kind of an issue of ongoing engagement. And I think that there's serious intimidation of workers. And I think an office that's out there proactively engaging and talking to workers can help bring to light a lot of these situations. And I know our DA is trying to increase efforts around the law enforcement side with their workplace justice initiative. And I think that goes hand in hand with what we're doing here. But let me ask Rene or Alor if they'd like to comment on kind of what it looks like today in terms of outreach to law enforcement about issues like this.
I can, Alor, if you want to. So like Supervisor Fletcher was saying, first the worker has to know something is wrong. And 98% of the time they don't know that the way that their employment is structured, that there's anything wrong with it. If anything, they learn that they've been misclassified when the promise of payment that was made to them, even though that amount was likely illegal, wasn't made, right? Like the payment wasn't done properly. So then they come to an organization like us or go to a Lord or the building trades and say what happened. And those are the people who can tell that they've been misclassified. So once that happens, you know, if the worker's on their own trying to figure out how to navigate that, good luck, right? But thankfully there are organizations that can help them. So if it's one of us that's helping them, we determine whether or not they've been misclassified, and there's various factors that go into that analysis. And then we figure out which venue is the best place to bring that situation so that the worker can be made whole. Sometimes that's a DA's office. Sometimes that's the labor commissioner's office. It just depends what the situation is and which one's going to be most powerful. Traditionally, traditional law enforcement, like the DAs of the world, haven't taken a huge interest in wage theft. And I would say, gosh, in the last couple of years, we've seen a tremendous shift, right? Like law enforcement is actually treating it like real theft, like they would treat any other type of larceny or, you know, any type of other theft. And it gives me goosebumps because that's never happened before. And it's really exciting that they're taking this seriously. So the DA's office in San Diego is one of my favorite partners to work with. So it's really exciting that the OLSE that hopefully will be created in San Diego will be able to work with the DA's office and identify these mass misclassification situations, which, like Carol was saying, it's rampant in construction, in janitorial, any industry, you name it. They're trying to push all of the liability and costs onto the worker. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I hopefully answered it.
Alor, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would just add that there are laws in that there are offices that are supposed to deal with this, but I think as has been said, and I think repeated many times, this is the key thing about this office, is that we adding capacity to deal with this. We adding local expertise that will know not only what the general sort of standards are, but will be able to apply to the workforce in San Diego that badly needs the people to look at the specific issues that we're dealing with, not statewide, here, and then be able to apply enforcement. So we have some laws, we don't have the man or the person power, I should say, the person power to do it right.
That's right. I'll just piggyback off of what Alora is saying. The issue really is about having the ability to enforce the laws, to require compliance with the laws. Just a couple of years ago, the building trades, we partnered with now Superintendent Thurmond when he was an assembly member on AB 1701, which allowed, which required that general contractors would actually be accountable for subcontractors who are behaving badly and then disappearing into the night, because often that happens too. And I think both of these, Laura and Rene, will be able to tell you countless stories of businesses who exploit workers and then just disappear and can't even be tracked to be able to gain recompense for those workers. So we have laws like this that we've helped pass, but they have to be enforced. And until they're enforced, they're meaningless. And so the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement is going to be really helpful. And we are, again, really excited, as Rene has mentioned, about the partnership with the DA's office here in San Diego County, because Summer Steffen's leadership on that has really been tremendous, and it has been, frankly, quite new in a lot of ways.
Thank you. And Jesse, just to bring that home, I mean, I think just the sheer fact of having an entity that's out there looking, just that alone can begin to help make a difference. If people know, hey, there's someone that could check and be there. And I think, and I want to commend our DA for her increased efforts and willingness to prosecute these. Does that, Jesse, that all answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I guess I got one follow-up on top of
Sure.
that. What would actually be the authority of the office itself? Could it, say, conduct its own audits if it wanted to, or does it have to put a bow on something and then give it to the DA's office?
Well, I mean, we're still in the process of development, but I believe it could go out and do audits and gather information and present that information to law enforcement, to document abuses, violations, and then if it rises to a criminal nature, then turn that over and make a referral to the DA.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. I guess just one more piggyback question on top of that. Would it have civil authority as well?
It should, but again, Jesse, we're still in the early phase. I mean, we've got to develop it and bring it back, but these are the areas that we want to explore to build in so that there's actual substantive enforcement.
Okay, great, thanks. And what's the timeline on that? Just curious.
The report back is 120 days. So we're directing staff to put together all the pieces that would take to pull this together and bring that back. So this would be the board saying, we want an Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. We want it to do these things. Go put together everything it would take to make that happen, bring it back to the board in 120 days for us to approve the direction.
Okay, great. That's all from me, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. Any other media questions? No? Any final thoughts from any of our panelists?
I'm just going to say that I think that, sorry, Laura. Yeah, it's, it's an inherently American value that if you actually make an agreement with someone that you will perform work for them for some wage, that you will actually be paid that wage. And this is something that that's super basic. I mean, this is, it's right there with things like, it's way beyond baseball and apple pies and moms, right? This is something that's critical to the way our communities function and survive and hopefully thrive. And so knowing that so many people actually struggle with these kinds of issues, and it's a big number. And I think Alora probably and Rene probably have that statistic under their fingertips, but so many people struggle with these issues, don't know who to turn to, are afraid to even go to those people who could help when these situations arise, for all the things that you mentioned earlier, Chair. People are afraid of losing their jobs, even when they're bad jobs, because at least this way there's some income coming in to help support their families, et cetera. This is such an important piece, and you're absolutely right that making sure that folks knowing that somebody could come in to check and inspect and investigate really sometimes is sadly the kind of incentive people need to do the right thing. So we know that there are lots of businesses and employers, by the way, who do the right thing all the time, and we're really grateful for them. Those are the high road employers that Rene mentioned earlier. But these other folks who aren't doing right by workers, they're the ones that undermine and really do make it hard for us to have a level, like those good work employers to have a level playing field in our economy. So again, this is really important, not just for workers, but for good businesses too. And so we're excited to see you moving forward on this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Laura, Rene, any final thoughts?
I just wanted to thank the leadership of the people in the panel, Carol, Kim, Rene, Amador. Thank you for the translator, Andrea and Lorena and Marta. And I would say a special recognition has to come, just piggybacking on what Carol's saying to you, Chair Fletcher. Carol just said, this is something basic. Well, this is something basic that we have in the county for the last 25 years. This is what change looks like. This is what responding to the community looks like. So we appreciate the effort. We want to be partners with you to continue to make this a real effective office. And so we want to thank everybody, but especially you, Chair, for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Rene, any final thing?
I think everyone covered it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rene. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to our workers. And just the final thought, Carol made a great point. If you are a responsible employer, you want this. If you follow the law and you treat your workers fairly, then you ought to be supporting this because you are at a competitive disadvantage to those who don't. And those entities most concerned with an Office of Labor Standard and Enforcement, they might be projecting something out there, because if you follow the law and you treat your workers fairly, then you should have no concern whatsoever, because you comply with and you do what you should do. So appreciate everyone joining us, and we're hopeful this will pass tomorrow, and we will keep everyone posted. Thank you all.